We are live. It is Empire State of Baseball on this Monday, August 21st, 2023. This episode number 58, airing on Twitch, Twitter, also known as X, and YouTube, and as always, powered by StreamYard. And gentlemen, welcome back. It is Empire State of Baseball. It's another Monday. Kind of sad to go outside after 4 o'clock and see the sun come down. It's just sad to watch, guys. I mean, it's crazy how quick this season comes and goes. But I know Tom is ready for a pumpkin spice latte.
Oh, there's nothing better than pumpkin spice. You give me pumpkins. I saw pumpkin spice Oreos in the store the other day.
Oh,
hard consideration to purchasing. Was stayed strong. It did not, but like a pumpkin spice Oreo.
I like it.
Sounds delicious.
Oh man. I mean, I'll tell you what, I'm looking forward to a nice one of the breweries near me, Source Brewery, at this time of year, usually mid-September.
Oh, the best.
Oh, the best brewery. And they come out with that the apple cider donut ale or whatever they call it. Oh, it's phenomenal.
I was there on Thursday.
It's a great place.
I like the apples. The apples being in season. There's nothing better than a fresh, crisp apple. So like going apple picking's a great thing, but I could do without the pumpkin spice. I don't get the appeal of that. So
I mean, you're just not cultured, man. It's all about the pumpkins, man. All about them pumpkin spice lattes. And I want to hear in the chat, by the way, if you're on Twitter, Twitch, or YouTube, Dunkin' Donuts. I don't even know if they call it donuts anymore. Dunkin' or Starbucks. Who's got the best pumpkin spice coffee? I want to hear it in your comments, even though it has nothing to do with baseball. And why should it have anything to do with baseball? Because as New York baseball fans, we can't wait for the fall to come. And we can't wait for football season to start. Because this is just going to be a hard couple of weeks to get by for the rest of the summer. At least from the Yankee fan perspective. The Mets, however, in the last week, played well. 6-2 in their last 8 games. I know we're going to get more into the Mets and the Queen's Gambit, but Joe, what are you thinking about your Mets lately, bud?
Yeah, I mean, you can't look too much into it. They played the Cardinals and the Pirates, but at the same time, they did play some good baseball, and some of the key guys who we've been waiting to hit all year are starting to hit. Alonso's got 4 home runs in his last 5 games. Lindor looks fantastic. He looks like the player you paid him to be. Nimmo and McNeil are finally alive, so you know, the 5 guys, the quote unquote core of the Mets, who they've been waiting for, are finally starting to click together. But unfortunately, it's too little, too late.
Yeah, it's unfortunate this time of year. I mean, a good week, but it's a little too late. The June
shout out JoJo.
Oh yeah, but June just completely killed the Mets season, and they had a little bit of hope in the first half of July, and then right after the All-Star break, it just fell apart again. So, I mean, technically, the funny thing is, though, the Mets are 5 games worse than the Yankees from a pure record standpoint, but their playoff percentage chance is actually a little higher, and that's just because of the nature of the wild cards in the American and National League. So, I've seen crazier things happen. We'll get into it a little later, like you said, Rich, but it's just a little, too late for the New York Metropolitans.
Little too late. And that's funny you mentioned the playoff chances. The Mets now 7 games back out of NL Wild Card 3, while Thomas, the Yankees are now 9 games back. And at this point last week, It was just 5 games back, and this 8-game losing streak has not helped their chances. And I know we're going to get into it shortly in the Bronx is burning, but just not happy times as a Yankee fan.
No. But yeah, like you were kind of alluding to it before. Last year, with the Yankees going on the playoff run, I wasn't excited for the fall and for the NFL coming back because I was so locked in on baseball and like the NFL was an afterthought. And I'm actually just real pumped up right now for football to start. The Yankees, I've watched some in the last week, just watching, knowing they're going to lose, and I'm ready to be done with it at this point. It's like a chore watching them.
But the troops are on the way, and we'll get into that momentarily after the lineup card, which of course starts with the Bronx is burning. The Yankees called up Everson Pereira today. He will be featured in tomorrow's lineup for the Yanks, so we'll get into that call up in just a little bit. Then we got the Fantasy Hot Corner with John Hernandez. He submitted his videos for the pickup of the week and the player spotlight. So looking forward to hearing that as we wind down the fantasy baseball season as well. The Queen's Gambit also makes a return. We get into the New York Mets baseball. Is it a little too late? I think we've kind of touched on it in the intro. It might be too little too late, but are there things to look forward to in the coming weeks for New York Metropolitan Baseball? And we're going to wrap things up with the trick of the trade for our game segment later on tonight. But let's get into it with the Bronx is burning. So Yankees, things aren't good, and now they've turned to they're ready to turn that page and look towards the future as Everson Pereira is getting called up. Oswald Peraza, it will also be joining the team as well. The one thing that has not been announced yet is the corresponding move. So Thomas, I don't know if anybody's projected to go on the IL, but I think this is going to have to result in two people getting cut.
I mean, you never know. Rizzo all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, but they're like, oh, by the way, you've had a concussion forever. And Jose Trevino, by the way, you've had an injury all season, and now you're on the IL. So there could be something at this point where they do put someone on the IL, but the Yankees have probably no shortage of DFA candidates. You could DFA a guy like Greg Allen. You could DFA a McKinney. Can DFA both of them. Frankly, you don't need both of them. Pereira at this point, you want to see him get run. You want to see him out there in the outfield. Sending Oswaldo down, it doesn't make a ton of sense because you'd rather see him get some play too. But you want Peraza to be starting almost every day, wherever that's going between third and second, and hopefully some short too. I don't know. Who do you think they're gonna?
I'm looking at the roster on roster restarts. Actually, the one obvious move would be Oswaldo Cabrera getting sent down. That's an easy one. He's got plenty of options left. But yeah, it's going to have to come down to a tough decision, which is not really that tough, between Bowers, McKinney, or Greg Allen. One of the three have to go. I
think they like Bowers. I mean, Bowers has led off for this team a lot this year, and he's bad at higher up in the lineup. I don't think they'll send. I don't think he'll be
had a rough week.
He has had a rough week, but he also plays first. I don't know. I think he's gonna. I think Bowers is safe in this. I'm not saying he's great. I'm just saying I'd be kind of shocked if he's the one to go. McKinney, I think that's the obvious. Point. Yeah. They traded for Greg Allen, even though a very marginal amount you traded for him. So I would think Greg Allen is kind of above McKinney in that way. Mm-hmm. But you got to make two moves. So I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Bowers got the flexibility first base. I didn't even really think about that. But the Allen or McKinney, I think, makes sense. It would have to be one of the two. Now, Corey, I'm going to toss the question over to you. Besides just who what the corresponding moves is, you think this is the right direction for the Yankees to look at for the next month and a half of, hey, let's see what our future is going to look like. You have a bunch of players that are coming off payroll at the end of the season, and there's no easier replacement than thinking internally. What do you think of these moves made by the Yankees, or soon-to-be moves made by the Yankees?
Yeah, no, I think it makes a ton of sense, and this is a really good time to do it. I mean, you're coming off a 1 of 10 stretch right now, and we were even talking a little bit about it last week, where it seems like every week we're doing the show, the Yankees are falling another game back, and it was one game. All of a sudden, now we're 9 games out of the third wild card spot for the New York Yankees. So I think this is a good time. Clearly, having the roster with all the veterans and some of the other guys filling in. Why not shake it up? This is a good time to do it. And you look at some of the numbers for the kids, too. I mean, look at Pereira's numbers here across both double and triple A this year. 921 OPS. I mean, that's a solid OPS to see if maybe he can continue that into the majors. Who knows? But listen, get a different dynamic. See what the future holds. See if these guys are hot. Will these guys be part of the 2024 plan? Do they look ice cold, and maybe the Yankees try to go a different direction via trade or free agency? Who knows? But this is the time to do it, because worst case scenario, you missed the playoffs. All right, so what? You're 9 games out anyway. But best case scenario, you end up either going on a crazy rally with these kids and make the playoffs, or at least you get to see the kids play. Maybe you get some excitement. Maybe you do finish 500 or better with the kids playing great, and at least that gives you a little bit of positive momentum going into the offseason next year. So I figure, why not? If you're going to do it, this is a good time.
Yeah, there's no playoffs this year. There's no run. There's nothing's gonna. It's too late. It's.
Will there be a 500? We don't even know if there's gonna be a 500.
I think 500's not even in reach. Listen, this is really unexplored territory for the Yankees here. and the Yankee fans. They haven't had a year where where the Yankees basically have waved the white flag, said, let's bring the kids up and play. I think they did it a little bit with Judge and them, but they weren't to this drastic of a point where they're sub 500 and they're clearly headed for a below 81 win season. I mean, this is really new territory for the Yankees in the last 3 decades. So, the Yankees are going to have to bring the kids up. They're going to have to play basically every day, see what you have next year. No one's going to lament the loss of Greg Allen or Billy McKinney or, Bowers has shown his moments, but these guys are not. These guys are your last guy on the bench, and the Yankees happen to have 3 or 4 of them, playing every single day. So you're not losing anything specifically, but the Yankees had to do something here, and they had to tell the fan base, this is what we are going to do for the rest of the year, because let's face it, the last week, the Yankees have been embarrassed like they have not been embarrassed in a very, very long time. The last week was a pathetic display from a Yankee ball club that has very, very rarely ever showed that kind of basic forfeitness in their game. I mean, that's what it comes down to. So the front office had to do something and bring these kids up and give the fans.
You have to wonder, is this last week, and obviously if it, how long it continues. I think we all probably agree Boone is going to be gone at the end of the year at this point. I don't think this is all Boone's fault. I think a lot of it is the construction of the team. Right. But I mean, Boone, they're going to scapegoat him. You wonder, even though they came out and said like Cashman's safe, you wonder, like, is there a point where it gets bad enough that Cashman isn't safe? Another thing I know I've seen like some Yankee Twitter and Yankee other podcasts talk about is if they don't fire Cashman, if they like quote unquote promote him, make him like a VP of whatever, and like he's still employed, he's still getting a ton of money, but like he's not running the show. Like, is that something in play? And then you do go out and find a new GM to run the ship. I don't know, because it's like Joe's right. This is uncharted territory for Yankee fans. For Yankee fans under 40. We've never seen this.
Yeah.
Tom, and I thought about that too with the idea of promoting Cashman to a president of baseball operations, but he's still the PBO. He's still going to have his finger on a lot of things. I think no matter who you assume underneath him, it's going to be the same show. And it's going to be the same case when the Yankees do eventually let Aaron Boone go. As you just brilliantly pointed out, it's a scapegoat move. They're only just going to bring in Aaron Boone 2.0. It's just going to be the same manager with his eyes on the field and his ears in the front office. I mean, that's simply what you're going to see coming out of this Yankees organization. It's got to be a full change. And maybe there's a part of it where this year it's Boone's head. But after another offseason / trade deadline and this mediocrity continues, I think it could be Cashman's head by next year.
Well, there's not a lot of things out I know we're not getting too far ahead of ourselves, but free agency next year is not this big class. There's Ohtani, right? So the Ohtani is the white whale for everyone. But after that, there's not a lot of names that you really could bring in that you say, like, this changes. Like, there's not a Teixeira and CeCe and AJ Burnett signing out there for this team. And that's what the team needs. They need like an influx of like skill and talent.
Understood, but you could still have a rock star offseason as a general manager, even if the biggest fish aren't in free agency. You can make certain trades, certain moves on your own team. Yeah, try to move a bad contract. I don't know if you're moving LeMahieu unless you're tying a top 5 prospect in a deal with that, but that could be on the table as well. Stan's going nowhere. I've come to Stan's going nowhere.
He literally the next few can't go anywhere. He can't run.
Yeah, he literally can't.
He's
literally can't. But yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens to them last year. But listen, you know what? You got to tip a cap to them, because if this is the first season since 1995 that they're going to finish under 500, I mean, all good things come to an end. And I look at another team that has been dominant in my lifetime. I mean, the Yankees, maybe not as much recently, but they've been a dominant force throughout my lifetime, especially when I was in elementary school. The other team in a different sport, how about the Patriots? Tom Brady. They owned the NFL for how long? 2 decades. Now Tom Brady's out of the league. He's been out of the Patriots for 2 years. Last year, they finished under 500. They haven't finished under 500 since I don't even know when as well. So all good things eventually do come to an end. You tip your cap and you move on. And if calling up these kids and they don't pan out and they do end up finishing under 500, so be it. But you got to look at it from a baseball operation standpoint, not trying to put some glorious stat out there that you haven't finished under 500. You have to look towards the future. This is the perfect time to flip the switch, and maybe they do get hot. I mean, they're only what 4 or 5 under 500, so they could still get that 500 goal. But the moral of the story for down the stretch here is look to the future. Do we have something in these kids? Are they part of our 2024 plans where we do want to go back, hopefully, to the playoffs?
I'll be strictly rooting for the continued season. And listen, you can say what you want about Anthony Volpe. I think Anthony Volpe, as far as an above-average offensive shortstop goes, I think he could be on that trajectory. I think this year, obviously, is growing pains. He's going to finish the season with 20, 25-plus home runs, which is certainly the Yankee way. But you'd like to see him develop more into a more dynamic bat come next year. But I'm excited to see his at-bats. Pereira, Austin Wells is certainly going to be on the way. I'm sure, like Tom, I would say Wells probably within the month you might see him up.
That's the funny thing is that's almost the easiest move. I'm assuming Workvet has options, just like ship him down and bring up Wells.
Right. But, yes. Yeah, and I think Wells is on the 40-man right now, so I think it's an easy move to make.
But I think Boone's gone at the end of the year, regardless of whether or not it's his fault. I don't think anybody's sitting here today saying, man, the Yankees, they can't lose Boone. You know what I mean? Like nobody's sitting there saying like Boone is some great, tactical manager or anything like that. And listen, on a good team, he kind of gets overshadowed. On a bad team, he's going to take the fall for it. And the reality of the situation is you got 5 guys similar to Boone. Boone's going to take the L on this one. He's going to move on. Somebody else is going to hire Boone because he did manage in the playoffs. He did go to a couple championship series. But at the same time, nobody's going to be heartbroken that Aaron Boone is gone. And then the Yankees, the other problem is, and if you look up and down the last, decade, for example, other than Judge, and if you want to throw Torres in there, you can throw Torres in there. What prospect have the Yankees brought up that has panned out? Like if you really go in and think about it, it's Judge. Gary Sanchez is DFA'd. He stunk. Torres is I'll give you Torres. He's a good player.
Gleyber is a very good player.
And we go back and forth on him. But what pitcher have they developed? What other position player have they developed? And the bottom line is the Yankees got old really quick simply for the fact that every single time they brought up a prospect, they haven't panned out, and they're usually gone within 4 years of coming up.
There are a couple players in there. Sorry, Tom.
I was gonna say, if you really honestly you pull back the layers on the Judge thing, they didn't even really develop him. He was a first-round pick, so it's not like a guy who needed all this seasoning. And Judge has had his own private hitting coach for half a decade. He doesn't use the Yankee system. He does his own thing. So, like, they didn't even really do that. Like, they could take credit for it, but Judge has been doing his own thing for a long time. So they haven't developed.
And you got to look at some of those players that were listed too. They were certainly on that major league trajectory when Severino and Sanchez took over those first couple of years. Yeah. You were thinking, okay, these guys are going to be some serious players that are going to be a problem for the league for the next 10 years. And unfortunately, injury caught up to Severino, and for Sanchez, it just never fully developed on the defensive side. Then his offense started to lack as well, which made him a significantly better catcher than most because of just his power numbers alone. Yeah. So I mean, you're right, Joe. Unfortunately, outside of Judge and Torres, it's hard to really sit back and think, all right, that prospect really did pan out for the Yankees. But I'll put it to you this way as well. Think about a lot of the Yankee prospects that they've traded before they even had a chance to get called up. Mm-hmm. They never really panned out either in their other major league friends. Ken Waldichuk's not Cy Young. Yeah. Last time I checked. And I can go back on other players. Blake Rutherford never panned out to be anything. He was a highly touted prospect in the Frazier deal.
I'd have to find like the tweet, but I think there was something like Yankee players from the Yankee system in the last like 10 or 15 years career war, not like even current Yankees. And Volpe was like third of players who've come. Like Judge was one, and I think Volpe was third just on this year. But that's your point. All the guys they've traded away, they haven't turned in anything either. The Yankee
Right.
system does get
It's
overvalued a lot of times, and I
It's
don't know.
amazing. I mean, you even when you trade away some guys, sometimes you run into it. I mean, look at the Mets with the Lindor trade. You know, they traded away Ahmed Rosario and Jimenez turned around and became an all-star. And you know, sometimes
Rosario's a solid player too.
yeah, there is. I mean, and you give credit. The Yankees have kept the best one in Aaron Judge. There's no one, and Hernandez brings up a good point. Greg Bird, Gary Sanchez, Garcia, Gil, Florial.
And another one to add to that list.
It's a lot. It's a lot of guys that
Montero.
this system, for whatever the reason, is just not developing players. You know, and we could say and the Yankees have done a good job supplementing the guys up until this point and put winning ball clubs forward, but it's not enough anymore. And eventually it catches you, especially when you've given out some bad contracts to a couple of old players.
And
I
was just gonna say, but like I know John made like the point. Clint Frazier, the Yankees kind of acquired him. Even like the Gleyber thing, the Yankees acquired Gleyber. They didn't really develop him. I've heard a lot of the Yankees hype up their own prospects, but I mean, there's independent prospect rankings out there. So like, I don't think like Baseball Almanac and all these other people are necessarily listening to what the Yankee scouts are saying and then doing their rankings. I think that those are mostly independently done. Every team hypes up their prospects. That's part of their thing. They have had a lot of unlucky stuff with injuries. Severino being definitely one of them. Greg Bird was always hurt.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. There's been some bad luck, but yeah, they haven't done anything that you can, other than they judge. That they can really say like we did this, and you can even go further back. Like you can go back. The last guy before Judge is like Ben Cano, and now you're going back like 15 years.
I saw an interesting one. What was the last? I won't even go to great. What was the last really good starting pitcher that came out of the Yankee system? Somebody said it was Andy Pettitte. That was the last.
So really, really good, consistent, stayed healthy, had a successful career.
Phil Hughes had a pretty good.
Nah.
He had to move on to have a.
Oh man, I think you're saying he came out of the system.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I could give you Hughes as a. He's
a solid major league player.
That was an overhyped prospect right there. Phil Hughes. I mean, the Yankees looked at him as like he's the perfect replacement of Roger Clemens.
Yeah. The Yankees screwed him and Jabba up so bad with the moving from the bullpen to the rotation to the bullpen. I think both those guys.
That's a good question. You know, listen, we give the Mets a lot of crap. The Mets have called up, tons of all-stars from their system. Now they've self-destructed or moved on in every ways, and the Mets haven't utilized it properly. But it like when you think back, if you got to think back, 15, 20 years to find an all-star, a borderline all-star starting pitcher that you developed, I mean, that's crazy.
That's tough, especially with
that's not their MO. I mean, for so long there, if you look at what their rotation was through the 2000s, it was going out and trading prospects and getting established stars. And frankly, that's how the offense was built too. But that's what it was. I mean, there was no room for a guy like a Phil Hughes to really flourish because there was, your rotation, you had your Messinas and you had your CC.
Randy Johnson.
Johnson. Like that was the move. The move was, let's go. Why develop a guy? We can just trade him. Why develop a Betances? We can, they end up put him in the bullpen and we could just go out and sign CC.
And the last,
actually, you know what? You brought up his name. I'm sorry, Corey. I'll throw it right back to you. That's a good one right there. If you're just talking pitchers and not just starting pitchers, Joe, that's one who had a very good career as a reliever coming up, but he should have been a starter in Dellin Betances. But go ahead, Corey.
Yeah,
sorry.
No, Betances is going for sure. I was going to say Wong too. I mean, I know he didn't pitch too long with the Yankees. He only had 5 years with the Yankees. 4 of them were solid though. And he was an all-star.
Another injury though. He's a guy who he had the stress fracture in his foot running the bases in Houston. Houston always is ruining things for the Yankees. And Chim Wong was never the same, but he was really good for a couple of years there.
Solid pitcher. But that's another example. We're going back, 15, 20 years roughly since he was coming up, mid-2000s, right? Around 2005, 6, 7, around that era. So it has been a minute, but I know we do have a lot more to talk about.
Yes.
We got John coming on a little bit for the Fantasy Hot Corner. We'll shift to the Mets in a moment too. But real quick, got to give a Twitter or X shout out, whichever name you prefer. I still call it Twitter despite it being X formerly. But we are airing live on Twitter. 2,200 plus followers and growing. Let's see if we can hit it 3,000 by season 3 next year, but more to come on that later. But follow us on X or Twitter at ESB Podcast, myself at G Gory, Joe at JR Pugs, Rich at Rich J Rivera, and Tom at T Waspel.
Yes, sir. But now it is time for the Fantasy Hot Corner with Jonathan Hernandez, who's joined us in our common thread here. He's on YouTube. Thanks for checking out the show, John. And we do have his video submissions from earlier today, which you also catch up on Instagram at Empire State of Baseball. So let's turn it over to Jonathan now with today's Fantasy Hot Corner. Take it away, John.
What's going on, ESP crew? I am back for another Fantasy Hot Corner. With the fantasy season starting to come to a close, I think this is a good week to talk about closers and put a spotlight on Felix Bautista of the Baltimore Orioles. Bautista is 6'8", and he is just a mammoth of a human being, appropriately nicknamed the Mountain. And he has been absolutely locked down in the ninth inning for the Orioles. Your first place Baltimore Orioles, by the way. 50 innings pitched, 109 strikeouts, 32 saves. Not sure you could ask for anything more from him. And if you have him, you're definitely happy that you have him as your fantasy closer.
Oh, absolutely. I'm ecstatic to have him as my fantasy quarter. He's been fantastic all year, considering how late I drafted him early in the year, and he's just been a revelation. But we saw signs of this last year that Bautista could be a dominant force in the back end of the bullpen. But he's just been, and that's one hell of a comment. He's been such a force for the Orioles in an era now where I feel the dominant closer is hard to find nowadays. So, Corey, thoughts on Felix Bautista?
Yeah, no, listen, I'm with John on this one. He's having a phenomenal year, Bautista, and he's a big reason why that team is doing what they are this season. So, shout out to him there. And like you said, the closer position across baseball, it's not like it was when we were younger. Going back in the Mariano Rivera days and all the guys that came up around that time as well at the back end of the bullpen. So, bullpens, completely different era now, how bullpens are used, throwing the opener. So, I do like the pick. And the only other pitcher at closer-wise recently, I mean, you got Diaz, and unfortunately he's on the DL, but a couple of other guys too. But it's a good pick. I'm cool with it.
Yeah, Rich, you got to put up those stats for a second again.
Sure.
I think, Bautista's been such a lockdown closer, and given the fact that the Orioles are where they are, I mean, you're talking a borderline Cy Young candidate out of a closer. That's how good he has been. I know he had a hiccup a few weeks ago, but in a year where there's not many standout candidates, I could see Bautista, being right there in the 3, 4, 5 spot for the Cy Young, and that's impressive given a closer. Usually you have to do something extremely special to get that warranted, but I just don't see the quality of pitching in the AL this year that's going to really make that field as full as it will be in the NL for the Cy Young race.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's definitely
Birdland, Thomas. Birdland.
Yeah. Listen, Bautista is part of my one fantasy team, my 4 horsemen of relievers. It's the points league, and I'm going against the grain and have him and Duran from Minnesota, Iglesias and Atlanta, and those guys just rack up points for me. So I've really enjoyed him being on my team, and I'm hoping he can help carry me and I guess Rich through. I'm assuming Rich may be in the playoffs. I don't know if you are or not. Keep carrying our squads because the Yankees aren't giving us anything to root for. So might as well root for our fantasy players.
Yeah, definitely rooting for fantasy teams at this rate. And no playoffs for us just yet. Got a couple weeks until that. But let's go to the next portion of the Fantasy Hot Corner with the not the player spotlight, the fantasy pickup of the week.
For the fantasy pickup this week, I'm going with old Met great Tommy Pham. Tommy Pham's available in about 90% of leagues still, in ESPN at least. And he's hitting third and playing every day for the Diamondbacks since he got traded. In the middle of a little bit of a career resurgence here between the Mets and the Diamondbacks, Pham is on pace for a 2020 season, which is really more than anybody would have thought going into the year that you could have expected from him. I mean, he was good enough for the Mets that they were able to trade him and get a young prospect in return. So, Tommy Pham was red hot last week, and hopefully he keeps it up going into this week.
I truly love the pickup of the week in this segment, just because a lot of these players that Job mentions are still available in most fantasy leagues, and you really get to see like the trajectory of like if those players were able to stick on or not. You have the bums, like he picked Jared Walsh just to give it a shot, didn't work out. He picked C.J. Abrams, and C.J. Abrams has been still solid since then.
Yeah.
So now he's gone with Tommy Pham, the veteran who split time with the Mets and the Diamondbacks this year, and John's calling it a career resurgence. But for Pham, he's definitely heightened his stock for his impending free agency once again. There, Joe.
Just kind of
Yeah,
hope he doesn't get suspended after he was like MFing fans the other day on camera. So that's, I guess, the only thing you have to worry about Tommy Pham at this point.
Yeah, I mean, he can be a little bit of a loose cannon. There was a tweet, a sentiment of the Mets after they got hot this week that that Tommy Pham was a problem in the clubhouse. Steve Cohen actually tweeted out today that Pham was nothing but an outstanding citizen for the Mets, and he was great to have around and worked hard every single day. Maybe Steve's, kind of sending a little message that, hey, we might be interested in re-signing this guy. But yeah, he's had a bounce back year in a big way. He's proved that he is a capable major league left fielder. I don't love his defense. Sometimes it can be tough to watch, but he gets up there, he hits the ball hard. He has a disciplined approach. He's not going to strike out 200 times a year. So to me, regardless of the attitude or perceived issues with personality, he is a solid he is one of those old school solid left fielders, kind of like a poor man's Bobby Abreu in my comparison.
I think that is a reach among reaches. Bobby Abreu was
I said poor man's Bobby.
Very poor man.
Poor man's
Bobby Abreu. Bobby Abreu is like
borderline Hall of Famer.
I was gonna say he's a borderline. He's in that hall of very, very good.
Very good.
Yeah,
Tommy Pham is.
No, but you know what I'm saying. He's not going to hit 30 home runs. He's going to hit somewhere between 15 and 20. He's going to keep his batting average up near 275 to 265, something like that. And Bobby Abreu is obviously the next step to that. But that's the kind of player I'm looking at as a left fielder, that you're not getting a slugger. You're getting a good 6-7 hole hitter that can be in your team every single day.
Yeah,
and maybe in the Hall of Fame. I'm like looking him up right now on baseball.
I think he's in that hall of very good, at least my opinion there. But listen, I'll talk about Tommy Pham too, and I can't speak from firsthand experience about the clubhouse piece. I wasn't there, so stories are stories. It is what it is. But watching the games, what I can tell you is Tommy Pham was one of our MVPs in the first few months of the season. The guy ended up playing a lot for us, and it ended up what was supposed to be a strict platoon for Tommy Pham ended up him being in the middle of the order, playing just about every day prior to him getting traded. He did a good job with the team, he made us eat our words too, because a lot of us across Met fans, I know John Hernandez in the chat too. He was a big anti-Pham signing, myself included. We all said, they should have got Duvall. Duvall's a better player for this team for what they needed, giving more outfield depth in center field and whatnot. But I have nothing but good things to say in Tommy Pham's brief tenure with the Mets. So I'm glad to see he's getting hot again. Good for the Diamondbacks. And again, if the Mets are out of this and this miracle run doesn't happen, go Diamondbacks. Why not? It's a different team in there. We haven't seen them in there for a minute. So go D-backs.
Good shout out to the Diamondbacks, because if you go to YouTube, you can check out our predictions for the year, which I'm sure we're going to review within the next month. But I had the Diamondbacks as a team that would make a playoff push, and they're on the cusp right now in the NL wild card. It's a really crazy division right now. Well, the wild card's insane. It's going to be fun to track that. But Thomas, you can go back to that prediction on YouTube. What's the details with YouTube for our new subscribers?
Yeah, so if you are watching us on the replay, thank you for watching us on YouTube, where you can find our full shows. You could find our shorts. You could find little segments that we chop up and throw up on YouTube as well. We have some of our post-game recaps on there. So make sure that you find us if you're watching us live. Find us on YouTube, like, share, and subscribe, and join our YouTube community.
All righty. Well, now it's time for the Gambit of Queens Gambit. Let's talk Mets baseball. 6-2 in the last 8 games, as I mentioned earlier today. So I know, Joe, you mentioned that, hey, they still play the Pirates and the Cardinals, but as a fan of a team that's lost 8 straight, a win's a win, and you take that and you don't take it with a grain of salt. But the Mets play, is there any shot that this team could, if you look at the schedule coming up, is there any shot this team has a chance of making it close at a wild card?
Listen, there is a sliver of a shot. And the only reason that I am saying that is the teams in front of the Mets are not good. Nobody wants this. The 4 teams above them have all played 500 or worse since the trade deadline. You got the Cubs, the Marlins, the Giants are like 3-12 in the last 15. Nobody wants to be there. So you have a sliver of a hope. Part of that is you have to beat the Braves and show that you're not just a scratching post for the Braves right now. I think they were up 3-0 early. I think they're now down 4-3 because Marcell Ozuna's gone off today.
Oh, he certainly has.
But at the same time, there's a little bit of disappointment with the Mets right now. Even though they are winning and producing, it's coming from guys like DJ Stewart, Rafael Ortega. Like, all right, good for them. I want to see them succeed, but at the same time, Vientos isn't up, Beatty's not up, Mauricio's not up. A lot of the kids that I thought we were going to get a chance to see, we're not getting a chance to see, whether due to injury or needing to be sent down. So for me, it's kind of like a hollow victory right now. I'll believe it when I see it. I'll put it to you this way. If you can get to 500 and get yourself in a position where you're right there with the Marlins, when you get to 3 back, I'll get excited. Until that point, I can't believe that it's more than a fool's hope that can happen.
Yep. No, exactly. And I know, Joe, you mentioned DJ Stewart and Ortega, and I'm going to read a few stats from some of the mainstay players on this team, because you mentioned the same thing with the kids. And when we got to the trade deadline, started trading the pieces off, all of us were saying, well, now we get a chance to see the kids. And just like Joe said, kids really aren't doing anything. Alvarez still up, but he is ice cold right now. I won't be shocked if he's our bear of the week next week. But look, Jeff McNeil did not have a Jeff McNeil start to the season. He's hitting .339 in his last 15 games. Brandon Nimmo, .353 in his last 15 games. Francisco Lindor, the best shortstop in Major League Baseball, .347 in his last 15. Pete Alonso is back to hitting for power, 8 home runs, 17 RBIs in his last 15 games. These are the guys who are now doing what they were capable of doing. It's just that it's coming so late in the season. And if you go back in like June, if 2 of those 4 players were this hot back in June, this team's going to have 4, 5, 6 more wins on the season. The problem in June, everything went wrong. And if you did have that one random day where the offense did good, what happened? The bullpen or the rotations would end up blowing it. But you're seeing the actual players on the Mets, the mainstay players for this team that you built this team around, they're finally starting to perform. And I don't know if it's because the pressure is off. I think it's just more so that they're going back to the norm. Everything balances out over time. Finally, now they're playing above their expectation, and it's going to balance out to right around where you thought they would hit for the season. So,
yeah, Corey, and those names you mentioned, those were the prime suspects of June, and a few more wins there in June, and maybe we're talking about a team that's making moves at the trade deadline. Now, I saw this point in the chat here from Jonathan Hernandez. Mets almost maybe should have tried to go for it. Grammatically, didn't make sense, but it made sense to me. Do you think the Mets regret at all not trying to make more buy moves and try to keep the guys that they had on? Because you can only imagine where this team would be if they still had Pham and Verlander and Scherzer. If those 2 were performing, especially the way I won't talk about the Sunday start, Corey, but Scherzer with the Rangers thus far has been solid. And Verlander he was starting to really figure things out with the Mets. Is there maybe a point of regret that the Mets opted to sell when they maybe need just a couple pieces to be in a better position now?
I personally still like the approach at the deadline because they fully committed. They didn't try to half-ass anything. They fully committed to, okay, this season didn't work out as we expected. Let's go make something of it and restock the farm system. They did a great job restocking the farm system. Of the guys you mentioned, the one guy that maybe I would have liked to keep would have been Verlander. So that way, at least you keep one of the big name pitchers. I do like Verlander going into next season more than Scherzer. I know Scherzer's tenure with the Mets, very polarizing. He had a great first half of the season last year, fell apart in the second half. Not good this first half. But Verlander, once he came back from injury, he was, good, bad. But like you said, finally settled in before they trade him. He might have been the one guy I would have liked to keep. But I will give the Mets and Billy Epler, who I've given a lot of hate in the last 6 months. Billy Epler, I give you credit because you executed a sell-off plan perfectly. You restocked this system, got rid of some money. They're still going to have to pay these guys a lot of money, but it's still a lot of money off the books at the same time next year. The only thing that concerns me when it comes to buying and selling and now going into next year's offseason, you have no pitching rotation. I mean, you got Kodai Senga, who, all right, Kodai Senga, great pitcher. Is he an ace? No, he's not. He's a low-end 2, high-end number 3 pitcher. Love the guy. You have Jose Quintana. He's a back-end number 5 pitcher. You could do a lot worse than Quintana as your 5 starter. They got nothing else going into next year pitching. So they have
to translate this in Yankee world, 2016 Yankees. What was their best point of their season as a team?
When they let the kids play and they traded off their assets. I think what the Mets did was smart, because I think we would probably all agree that the Mets for the past couple of years have been a little bit of fool's gold. A lot of guys playing above probably their abilities, and they're able to kind of sell some of those guys off and get some talent back. Because I don't think if you would have brought this crew back next year, I don't think it would have been better. I think it would have been worse. And we're saying the offseason doesn't look like super, super fruitful, especially for a team that is probably going to do a lot of their building just through signing free agents. So I think they made the right decision. Get some of the, I know they've had some of the young guys up, some more, hopefully, the Mets are coming soon. I know a couple weeks ago I mentioned about service time manipulation. I know one hurdle of that has now passed where guys, if they play less than 45 games, still have their Rookie of the Year eligibility. So that has now passed. So you would hope you get some of these guys coming up, because you could maybe was holding out hope for like a Mauricio winning Rookie of the Year, and he can if he plays 50 games or whatever. So I guess we'll see. But I think they made the right decision. I don't think they're going to regret it, and I think it's a decision, frankly, the Yankees should have made too.
Yeah, and I don't think the Mets can look back and anticipate the 4 teams above them basically doing the same exact thing they are, which is playing mediocre baseball. And you can also be the standpoint of look at what the Angels did and look at what San Diego did. These are 2 teams in a very similar position as the Mets. They both emptied out the farm, less San Diego, but the Angels emptied out the farm, and they're both gonna miss the playoffs. I mean, there's no doubt. So in that particular case, or look at San Diego's case, for example, would you rather be the Mets coming into next year with a restocked farm system, or San Diego with a ton of question marks whether this team can gel together? Soto having 1 foot out the door, Blake Snell probably not going to be there at the end of the year, and they don't really know if the way their team is constructed can handle it. The Mets at least know, hey, we got our core 5 guys, whether it's Alonso, McNeil, Nimmo, and Senga, and Diaz, if you want to throw him in there, and we have a restocked farm system that we know we can pencil these guys in to the slots that we're going to need them for in less than 2 years. So I think the Mets did the right thing. At the end of the day, they're going to let it ride this year. It is what it is. If they back into the playoffs, so be it. I don't think anybody expects them to go anywhere, but at the end of the day, they did the right thing for the organization and the franchise to make this franchise a consistent winner going forward. And that's the most important.
I think your question would rather be the Mets or the Padres. I think you would definitely say the Padres. The Padres also have again, this is based on MLB's rankings, a top 10 farm system and 2 top 10 overall prospects in their system. Plus a lot of the guys you mentioned. I think the Padres are still set up to run it back in a better spot than the Mets are. But the Mets are in a better spot than they were 2 months ago when they had a bunch of these, guys that maybe really weren't panning out and they were able to sell off.
Yep. We do have some comments on the Corbin Carroll versus Kodai Senga for the NL Rookie of the Year. So I guess we can end on this note. I mean, Corbin Carroll is definitely fallen off from where he was. I mean, there was one point in the season where it was very possible that Corbin Carroll could not only win the NL Rookie of the Year, but also the NL MVP of the 2023 season. And we have a comment here from Nicholas Arnold. Thanks for joining the show. Carroll may have fallen off a cliff, but he still has had a better season than Senga overall. Voters are going to vote Carroll. Joe, as a Corbin Carroll owner in fantasy baseball and a Mets fan, where's your vote lying here? All biases aside.
I still think it's Corbin Carroll because the impact to the Diamondbacks has given them, it gave them life and legitimacy at the beginning of the year. At the end of the day, rookies, and Senga's not a real rookie. He's a professional ball player that came over.
Still eligible for the award.
He's still eligible for the award, but there's no dog days of summer for Kodai Senga. Rookies, and this was my message early in this year, and why Buck Showalter got so much hate for not, for resting his guys. These kids burn out. My vote would still be probably with Corbin Carroll just because the impact has changed the Diamondbacks, I think. And I think what they're going to be coming into next season is they are going to be anticipated to be near the top of that division challenging the Dodgers. And that's a large part due to him. Senga is a very, very good pitcher. He's had a great year. And listen, maybe Carroll slumps it off the rest of the year. I think he'll end up getting hot again in September. We know what happens. These things come in waves, and who knows? But right now, my vote's with Carroll. Senga could take it from him if he finishes the year really strong. And Carroll,
I think it's Carroll as well, because if you look at really all the awards, and you can put this out through all the major sports. There's a narrative around them, right? A lot of times it's the writers who are voting for them, and the narrative around Carroll all year has been he's going to be Rookie of the Year, and that's kind of the story's been written. And I think that's just where people are going to vote unless Carroll continues to fall off a cliff and Senga has an incredible next 6 weeks. I think it's going to be Carroll. You see the same thing with MVP votes and stuff. When someone is kind of Acuna's been the MVP since May? For the NL, it seems like, and I don't think it almost seems like it doesn't matter what happens. He's gonna be the MVP because it seems like that's the story that's been written. I'm not saying he should. I'm just saying I think that's what's gonna happen because that's how traditionally these awards go.
I think Freeman has made a run at MVP and made that race a dead heat, a dead toss-up. I mean, Freeman has had an unbelievable year. The Dodgers have caught absolute fire. And listen, Acuna is the best player on the best team. But man, I tell you,
make sure you hit that tilde, because if you don't, Rich is gonna get all butthurt about it.
Not Acuna. Acuna Matata. Corey, what do you got on this?
Oh man, well listen,
that'd be a good fantasy baseball team name.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the National League MVP, I'm still going to go with Acuna for right now. But going back to the NL Rookie of the Year, when we did our preseason predictions way back in a March show, I did have Kodai Senga as my NL Rookie of the Year candidate, and I backed it up with a little FanDuel bet. I think I threw a $25 free bet on Senga to win Rookie of the Year. So I hope he does it. And look at the guys that are up there. Corbin Carroll has cooled off significantly since he was red hot in the first half of the season. And the other few guys up there too. Elly De La Cruz was a hot name for a month. I haven't heard his name in a minute. I mean, he's cooled off too. He's having a bad year, but he's cooled off. The hype is cooled off. Francisco Alvarez, another guy who was a longer shot candidate to crack that top 3 NL Rookie of the Year. He's been ice cold in the month of August. So that's kind of cooled his numbers. And Kodai Senga has gotten better as the season's progressed. He had the issue where he wasn't doing good on 5 days rest. So they were trying to finagle the schedules, try to get him that 6th game. When he did pitch in 5 games, that's when he tended to be a little off with his command, high pitch counts in the 4th, 5th inning. And he's gotten a lot better throughout the season with that. And look at the numbers. I mean, he has a chance now to have a sub-2 ERA when this is all said and done. He's already hit 10 wins. And I know Arnold mentioned in the chat that wins, you know what, wins aren't as valued anymore. I do agree with that. Quality starts a better stat. But 10 wins is 10 wins. And he has been the Mets' best pitcher on the team this year. And if the Mets do have any sort of miracle run, Kodai Senga is going to be a big part of that. So I do hope he ends up winning it. The money would still have to be on Corbin Carroll, but I have to say Kodai Senga is highly trending up, and if you want to get some good odds, that's a good play to make, because I think he was ranked 4th or 5th in NL Rookie of the Year voting when I just checked in terms of FanDuel. I think he was 4th or 5th in odds, so not a bad bet if you do want to take a little bit of a long shot.
Oh, yes, sir. And we'll end on that note. Be interesting to see how this Carroll Senga race checks in over the next month and a half, but let's check into Instagram. Joe, what do we got going on over at the gram?
Excuse me. You can follow Empire State of Baseball at Empire State of Baseball on Instagram. Corey Favs at Corey Favaloro at Corey Favs. Myself at JR Pugs. Rich at Rich J Rivera. And Tom at T Waspel on Instagram. Check out our post-game recaps posted on there. We'll also post the segments like Trick of the Trade, Guess the Graph, and our featured weekly Bulls and Bears Strike Exchange. All that goes up on our Instagram and Twitter page, so you can check them out, comment on that.
That is the New York Strike Exchange, as we like to call
New York
it here,
Strike.
not the Bulls and Bears Strike Exchange. But a valiant effort there by Joseph. But yeah, give us a follow on Instagram for all that good content. And Joe mentioned the games that get posted, including this one. It is Trick of the Trade. Take a look at the standings right now, and Joe is in the lead with 14. Me and Tom are tied at 12. Now, Tom, I did go to the replay last week between the A-Rod or the Alex Rodriguez. It was on the money. We said it both at the same exact time. So I awarded you a point, and I awarded myself a point as well. So you could go back, Joseph and Corey, but it's so close that I can't tell who said A-Rod or Alex Rodriguez first. Very close. Again, go to the replay, back to our YouTube spot. So now let's move it on to Trick of the Trade. Now, Tom, I know you have the trade, but this time it is not a Yankees deal.
Ooh.
It is not a Yankees deal. No, we have a very hallowed trade back from the offseason, January of 2005. Huge prospect, and by huge, I mean, I don't know who this guy is. I thought Rich might have spelled his name wrong, but I think it's right. Ian, I'm just going to assume it's Bladdergroin, because that's a quality last name. Going from the Mets to the Red Sox, and the Mets acquiring this
Doug
player.
Mankiewicz.
It is Doug Mankiewicz, yes.
I had to say it because that 2005 team was probably the first team that I watched like almost every single game. Because I really started to get into it in middle school. And I had to cut you off there, Tom, because I know I have a lot of points to make up. So I was not waiting for anyone to beat me to it.
I've made that move before. I respect that move. Doug Mankiewicz, I was going to say, and I mentioned it to Rich when I sent him the trade, he would later be a Yankee.
Corey,
So,
I will award you a
there's
second
there.
point if you can give me the spelling of Mankiewicz right now without looking, obviously.
Oh.
I swear, I will give you a second point. You got cut off at the wrong time, bud.
Oh, sorry. MEIN.
Nope, already off.
All right, yeah.
M-I-E.
That would have been
impossible.
impossible. That would have been impossible. So
MENTTKIEWICZ, I think is this correct spelling.
probably got some silent
back on
J's
that,
like
but
our
it was
good
my
friend
point.
Rankiewski in the chat. So a couple silent H's and J's in there. But,
Doug Mankiewicz.
All right,
Yeah,
but very good.
I couldn't
Very good.
stand
Point to
him growing
Corey.
up. I always felt like he stole Gold Gloves from Tino. He
Mm.
won like 2 or 3 Gold Gloves. I feel like in Minnesota, and I really wanted Tino to win one. So always hated him for that.
Doug Mankiewicz, correct answer. Good stuff, Corey. Let's move on to Joe's. Now, it already threw me off that Tom did a Met question, but Joe didn't do a Met question, nor did he do a Yankee question.
Ooh.
Let's see what Joe has right here.
Oh,
All right, so I put up a trade that I felt impacted the one of our teams the most of any deal that was done that year. So
Oh, boy.
there's two big major league, I wouldn't say big major leaguers, but there are two major league pieces that are most people should know. One went to the Diamondbacks with the other three prospects and then one went to the Red Sox.
Kurt Schilling went to the Red Sox.
That is correct. That was the easy one.
All right. Okay.
That is the one that probably impacted the Yankee season more than any other move.
Is one Shea Hildebrand?
No.
Because he did get traded around
this
that
is where
time.
Immaculate comes into play here.
Yeah.
So you have the D-backs of the Red Sox tomorrow. Yes, Sergio.
So this person actually played as recently as 2018.
Oh,
Was
okay.
it Chris Young?
No.
Good. Oh, that's a great guess. Is it other Chris Young?
No.
Damn.
This is interesting. So the Diamondbacks player, okay, 2018.
Do not look at the chat because there are correct answers in the chat.
Oh wow. Okay. Somebody's been mastering that immaculate grid.
Yeah.
I want to say this is like another pitcher in there. I know
a prospect.
Pitcher. Yeah, I believe he was a prospect at the time.
So it might not be an immaculate grid because he never played for the Red Sox.
Kason Gabbard.
No.
What is that?
That's if you think stereotypical AL West pitcher, this is the guy.
AL West.
Brandon Webb?
Oh
No.
It's not Brandon Webb.
He was a Diamondback.
I know, but it wasn't Brandon Webb.
It's in the right time frame.
Brandon Webb.
I love Brandon Webb.
Yeah, me too. I'm a big Brandon Webb guy.
Could give points in the chat if you want.
Yeah, I think I'm going to defer to the chat because I'm a blank. I just peeked myself.
Well,
in the
Joe,
chat,
I actually think, as far as us is concerned, I think you secured this one.
Yes, it is
I
Jorge
think final
De La Rosa.
Okay.
Ah.
There's no shot. Yeah,
I would have never got it.
absolutely no shot.
I'll take
absolutely
my
no
Kurt
shot.
Schilling.
Who in the chat was using Google? That's ridiculous.
Nicholas
Jorge De La Rosa.
Wow. What
Get out of
name.
here, Art.
I'm
Oh my
surprised you didn't do
goodness.
this.
What is that?
Because Brandon Lyon was in that trade. And I feel like Brandon Lyon is much more of a
Oh,
guy than Jorge
Yeah.
Rosa.
De La Rosa was in the major leagues from 2004 to 2018. He
Wow.
won 104 games.
I
with
know who
4.58
Jorge De La
ERA.
Rosa is, but for that to be a thought is incredible.
Wow. Lion, I would have thought too, because Lion, I think, was a Met for 1 year too. It was like a bad Mets team, but I think Brandon Lion was a Met for a
That
minute.
sounds correct.
So he originally was traded for Kurt Schilling, and then almost immediately, 3 days later, traded with Chris Capuano, Craig Counsell, Lyle Overbay, and Junior Spivey
Junior
for
Spike.
Richie Sexton.
Oh man, so many ex-Yankees in that deal.
Yes.
Brandon Lyon was a Met. He ended his career in 2013 as a Met.
Okay, so I was a little
All
further
right.
back.
Well, so everybody got a point
Would've-
except me. Very nice. Corey, a
Would have
point
made,
for
would
you.
have made
Tom,
more
a point
sense
for
to
you.
have that.
That's what you get for
And then
gifting
Joe, a
yourself
point for
after
staying
last
on for very nice. The Kurt Schilling.
I know, and we got to
Alrighty.
throw Arnold a
Yeah.
point too.
I think
Arnold a
Kurt
point.
Schilling's a lot worse than Acuna.
You can never trust a man with two first names, so I don't know if I'm gonna do it. But so the standings will obviously change there. Joe remains in the lead. Tom now sole possession of second place, and third place for me, and then Corey at the end with 7, but has time to still catch up in this thing. All right, now if you go over to Twitch, we obviously are live on the show, and it begins to complain Twitch is a little glitchy. So this is not to disparage Twitch. There are certain days where things aren't going right, so obviously that's why we have YouTube and Twitter. But shout out to Twitch, though, for being the OG of streaming for us here on the platform, Empire State of Baseball. And if you want to check out the link on Twitch, it also stores our previous episode as well, so you can go back and instantly find that as well. You can check out the link tree on both our Instagram at Empire State of Baseball and X/Twitter at ESB Podcast as well. We're going to wrap things up. It's 8:59, but next Monday will be episode 59 for Empire State of Baseball, Monday, August the 28th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And after that, we're going to have a series of announcements that have to do with the new scheduling of the show, Monday Night Football coming up. Obviously, we're not going to be interfering with MNF starting on September the 11th. So we will keep you guys posted on all that and more. But let's send around the room for some thank yous, starting with Thomas.
I want to thank Aaron Nola for giving me an effort in fantasy right now. 7 innings, 7 hits, not great, but two earned, 5 Ks. I'll take that. As by one team in the playoffs, another team fighting for it. So thank you, Aaron Nola, for being that guy for me.
Yeah,
right.
I am going to thank Disney because Ahsoka comes out tomorrow, so that gives me something to watch right before the playoffs. So the only thing I am upset about is that will be on the same time as Hard Knocks, so I got to split between 2 episodes. It's gonna be a long TV night tomorrow for me. So and hopefully I'll have the Mets on my phone, and I'll make sure that I'm watching and keeping up to date with them as well.
Yeah, no specific thank yous, but I want to give 2 shout outs. One to the Mets. They're winning right now 7-4 against the Braves. So listen, if you're going to make a miracle run, this is the chance to do it. But also shout out to CJ Tooker, one of our ball comrades. Congratulations on your wedding yesterday.
Yeah, congratulations to CJ. I'm not going to thank Disney there, Joe, even though Ahsoka is coming out for all the big Star Wars nuts out there. I can't think of what they're doing to Snow White. That's a whole other story, though. That's a whole other thing. But yes, to baseball season, hopefully coming to a quick end in New York, and football season just around the corner. Want to thank you all for joining us again for another edition of Empire State of Baseball. We'll see you here next Monday, August the 28th. Take care.